Most people who have heard the phrase, all the way to Timbuktu, take it to mean the farthest, most remote place you could possibly imagine. When I asked some people where they thought it was before they learned where it actually was, or maybe they still don't quite know where it is, the answers I got back were literally all over the map. This is exactly what makes this word so interesting, because it is both a real city and one of the longest running metaphors in the English language.
For centuries, Timbuktu was not on the edge of anything. It sat right at the crossroads of trade routes connecting the Niger River and Sahara Desert. Gold from the south, salt from the north, and books from across the Islamic world all passed through here. Far from being remote, Timbuktu was a hub, a place where cultures and goods converged. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, Timbuktu became famous for its scholarship. The Sankore University and dozens of private libraries held thousands of manuscripts on law, medicine, astronomy, and poetry. This was African intellectual life at its height. Those stories often skipped over the city's achievements and treated it as something to discover, as if it had no history until Europeans arrived.
Caravans brought salt and gold and manuscripts, making Timbuktu one of the most important intellectual, scholarly, and commercial hubs of its time. For Europeans in the 18th and 19th centuries, Timbuktu was more of a legend than reality.
In both geography and linguistics, there's a word known as toponym. A toponym is simply the name of a place. Sometimes toponyms stay tied to their literal location, like Paris or Mount Everest, and other times a toponym takes on a second life, becoming shorthand for an idea. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Timbuktu became that kind of toponym in European conversation. For Europeans who had never been there, it represented the ultimate destination. Distant, mysterious, and rich in possibility. Stories from explorers and traders painted it as a city of unimaginable wealth, set at the edge of the known world. And it is that gap between expectation and reality, which is why the name had shifted in meaning.
Reaching the actual city was quite dangerous. When French explorers finally reached it in the 1800s, they found a modest desert city far from the golden streets of the myth. It wasn't enough to say over the hill or across the mountains. Now you could say clear to Timbuktu, pointing to somewhere halfway across the world.
In cognitive psychology, there's a concept called psychological distancing, and it describes how our minds perceive separation not only in terms of geography, but also in time, culture, and familiarity. When a place is outside our direct experience, our mental representation of it shifts to the far edges of what feels quote-unquote reachable.
Once the world caught on, it spread kind of like a meme. Long before TikTok or Twitter, phrases traveled by postcards, music hall jokes, comic strips, and word of mouth. Timbuktu became shorthand for the absolute middle of nowhere in the same way that the boonies or BFE have become today.
By the mid-20th century, in popular culture, things like Looney Tunes, Broadway musicals, and Hollywood films have kept this metaphor alive. Generations grew up knowing the word, but not the place, which is why so many people today still think Timbuktu is fictional. On screen and stage, it works as an instant shorthand for as far away as you can imagine, like a cultural inside joke that doesn't need explanation.
These are French weapons?
Check the markings.
How did you get them?
I borrowed them from their arsenal in Timbuktu. Now, do you still think I'm a risk?
The staying power of Timbuktu says a lot about how language preserves cultural memory. The word carries centuries of trade, myth, colonial imagination, and popular culture in just 3 syllables. Even if you don't know Molly from Madagascar, you probably know Timbuktu means about as far as you can get.